Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to give the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm your host, Cesar Carino, and our guest today, a very special guest at that, is one that who everyone knows in Wadsworth, Alice Hartman Chester, and known to everyone as Miss Hartman. Even though she's Mrs. Chester, still Miss Hartman. We still remember you as Miss Hartman. You came a long time ago, about 60 years ago or so, is that right?
Well, 1930, it's September of 1939.
39, so that makes it, this September will be, this is 59 years. That's almost 60, isn't it?
I think so.
Almost 60. Now, you came from where? You weren't born here in Wadsworth, were you?
No, I was born in Medina.
In Medina. Always lived in Medina.
And I live in the same house that I was born in. My father was born there, and my house was built in 1887 by my great-grandfather and great-uncle.
And your last name was Hartman.
That's right. And my father's name is Roland Hartman.
We had a lot of Hartmans here in Wadsworth as well. And many of those Hartmans actually were the progenitors of the people who live here right now. Mm-hmm. So probably are related, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Probably there's relationships.
In Sharon Center, we have a lot too.
A lot of relationships up there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your growing up days in Medina, and then how you happened to come to Wadsworth, where you went to school, and where you went to college, and what you majored in, and all of those kinds of things.
Okay, I went to a Poe school.
Poe. And Poe no longer exists, does it, as a school?
No, but it's a township.
Township building,
and it's
right.
Oh, it's beautiful.
They did a nice job.
Air conditioning and everything.
That's well, you didn't have air conditioning then, though.
We did not. And I started there in 1923.
1923.
Yeah, and my mother was a school teacher there, and I had her as a teacher. She taught there for 36 years. And my father was a farmer, and when my parents were married, they moved in with my grandma. That was my grandma's place. And so I had a wonderful grandma. She kind of spoiled me, I think.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure. She'd say, Alice, go and play the piano while I do dishes.
You thought it was a pretty good trade-off. Now, you said that you started in 1923. Does that mean that you were born somewhere close to
18?
1918.
You got me.
1918. So that means that
March 13th.
March
13th.
March 13th, 1918. And you will be, this coming year, you will be how many years old?
80.
80 years old, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And thankful to be alive.
Pardon me?
And thankful to be alive.
And you're still very energetic, very bright, and very, do you still play the piano?
I play all the time.
And how did you become involved with playing the piano? I mean, did your parents think that that was the thing to do, or what?
Well, I was, my father was a trumpet player, and I had music in our house all the time, and he played in the Medina Band for 36 years.
He played for the Medina Band in 36 years, but he's a farmer.
Yes,
First
he was.
chair. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Who was the director of the band at that time? Barons?
No, it goes way back.
Back before that?
Well, there was Fred Kelser, and I just can't think. I don't remember, but I remember we'd go to every Saturday night. We would go up there as little kids and play around the park and listen to the band. So I grew up with band music. And so
this would have been probably in the mid-20s, is that right?
Yes, right.
Mid to late 20s.
Mm-hmm. That was a big thing for us, and we would go up there and have more fun. And then he would go to play in Lodi, Ohio, in the band, and he'd get a silver dollar, and that was a lot of fun on Wednesdays. So
you played in Lodi on Wednesdays and then Medina on Saturday nights.
Sometimes, yeah.
So you had music all the time. Was your mother musical?
No, but she was a support to us all, and then we had a family orchestra too. That's
what we want to talk about today. Your family orchestra. How nice that was.
Oh, that was fun. Well, see, everything centered down at Poe. We had a Grange Hall, and we had the church, and the school, and then we had 4-H, and a lot of us grew up together, and we went just to 8th grade in Poe.
So, and then where did you go?
Medina.
Medina.
Mm-hmm. And some of my friends are still around. We're still very close friends, and we've stuck We were together.
You stayed together. That's wonderful. Now, after you graduated from Medina High School, you went to college where?
Baldwin Wallace College.
Baldwin Wallace
The
College.
Conservatory.
And what year was that?
I graduated in 1935 from high school in June and went in September, and then I graduated in 1939.
My oldest brother started there in 1939 in the conservatory, violinist. I don't know whether you remember.
Yes, I do, yes. But I was
Violinist.
in the September, and I was out in June.
That's right. However, there was a little conflict called World War II that,
Oh, yes.
that caused him about a 7-year hiatus because in addition to having served 4.5 years in the service during the war, he was severely wounded, and his left arm was wounded, so he couldn't play the violin anymore. So he went back to college then in 1946, 46 or 47, whenever he was well enough, and then he graduated in 1949. However, he would have probably taken the chair that you left at the conservatory in 1939. You went from 1939, you graduated from Baldwin Wallace College, and you came directly to which city? Tell us.
Wadsworth.
Wadsworth. Why did you come to Wadsworth?
Well, I was looking for a job, and at that time there were not...
No jobs at all.
No, and I remember going to Norwalk and different places in the area applying. And my father was a county commissioner in the 30s for 2 terms. And there was Helen Trump that worked in the commissioner's office. And she said, well, I know Mr. Close, so I'll speak to Mr. Close. Well, he said at that time, they didn't have an opening because Helene Lackemeyer.
Yes.
Remember her?
I surely do.
And she was
I didn't know that her name was Helene. We called her Miss Lackemeyer.
I know. And then I believe in August, I was, gee, I even helped my dad making hay. And I was out there, my mother called out and said, Mr. Close would like to have you come down and see you. So it said that Miss Lackemeyer had gone to Barberton.
Yes, right. That's where I remember her particularly there as well. As a matter of fact, I was associated with her somewhat tangentially because she was the director of a women's group, and I had that women's group sing for a PTA, in which I was involved, and she came somewhat frequently for that. And one of the songs that they sang repeatedly was "Tiptoe Through the Tulips."
Oh yes, Tiptoe
Through the tulips.
Well,
you know, talking about Mr. Close, this is a little bit later on. However, one of the things we have here is a letter from Mr. Close to you. It says, "Dear Miss Hartman, school will open Tuesday, September 5th, with teachers meeting at 8 a.m. This shows the Franklin schedule." That's where you were at the time, right? "We have no designated principal for Franklin this year, so I shall give more time to the situation there. Sincerely, F.H. Close." So we actually have a letter here from Mr. Close, and we have the schedule for Franklin School. And here's the envelope, which came with that, a 3-cent stamp, and it was written by hand by the superintendent.
Oh yes.
And we had the address, I think, is particularly significant. It says, Miss Alice Hartman, Medina, Ohio. And you got it, right?
Oh, yes.
Medina, Ohio. What was your zip code? You didn't have a zip code.
Didn't have a zip code.
You didn't have a zip
RD, he said, he has RD1.
RD1. Well, he knew that they would know who you were. But everyone knew everyone else in Wadsworth and Medina and everyone else.
Yes.
I mean, you just know who those people were. But that's so significant that we would have that. Now, tell us about your first job here in Wadsworth. What did you do? You came as a music teacher, obviously.
Yes. Well, at Central School.
At Central School. And who was the principal at that time?
Mr. Work.
No, I mean at the...
Miss Lytle. I'm sorry.
And we have a picture of Miss Lytle, too, as a matter of fact. We've been talking about her for a long, long time. Here's a picture of this young girl over here on the left-hand side who was Miss Hartman.
With black hair.
With black hair. And it certainly isn't black now, but it's just beautiful white. And there is Miss Lytle. On this program, we have talked about Miss Lytle I don't know how many times. And there she is.
She was a wonderful lady.
She was a wonderful lady. At that time, how old would she have been when in
Oh, golly.
1939? Do you think that she...
I don't know.
My guess is that she was in her 50s at the time, was she not?
Probably. But she was a wonderful teacher, and she would read poetry to all the children. See, when I started out, first grade, we had Jenny Wolf Harpster.
Yes, Jenny Harpster.
And I see her every Friday, and we have lunch and visit and everything. Good, very good, one of my best friends. And second grade, Lulu Knopf.
Lulu Knopf, and she was a toughie, wasn't she?
Oh, yes, she was.
Stern, had the bun in the back of her hair.
Downstairs.
Yes.
Her room is downstairs.
Downstairs. Tell us a little bit about Lulu Knopf as you remember her. I mean, many of the students have come by and have talked about Lulu Knopf, but we've never had a fellow teacher talk about Lulu Knopf.
Well, she would do anything that you ask, and she was a very kind lady to me, and I was just fine with her, of course, but she was very strict with the children.
Extremely strict.
But
And where did she live?
She lived out on Ackerd Road.
Which Knopf family did she belong to?
Well, her brother, I can't tell you right now, I can't recall the brother's name, but she lived right next door. She lives out on Ackerd.
O.L. Knopf?
Yeah, before you get there.
Okay.
And
She's a maiden lady, was she not?
yes, she was.
So her brothers, she had no children,
No.
but she had nieces in the school as well.
Yeah.
Lois Knopf,
Yes.
the niece.
Yes. And
Lois will be 72 years old, or 71 years old now.
oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And she was a very kind. She was a nice lady. She was. I just was fine with her.
Who were some of the other teachers you taught with that first year?
Velma Birkbeck, third
Velma
grade.
Birkbeck, yes, and she had 4 children too, and one of them was killed in the service.
That's right. And
And then she had a Vivian Birkbeck, and then she had a couple of boys. Vivian is a beautiful girl.
yeah, one boy, I believe.
One boy.
I believe. Yes, I know that we were at Central Grade, and they called and said that he was missing, and I had to take her home, and to her husband, tell her husband that her son had gone.
But he wasn't dead at that time. They didn't know that he was dead at that time, but then he died. He was killed.
And then the fourth grade, Miss Wolfman and the art teacher and music teacher shared the fourth grade. And well, for instance, if I would be in the third grade having music, the third grade teacher would go over in the fourth grade and have a subject in there. And we did that. See, we had music and art every day. We divided like that. And then, let's see,
You had Doris Boffman. We've also talked about Doris Boffman in this program many times, but again, we have not had another teacher talk about her. Doris Boffman is ageless. I mean, she was a beautiful woman all the way through her lifetime. She had to be much older than we ever thought that she was.
Oh, yeah.
Was she older or younger than you?
She was older, 9 years old. 9 years old.
So she'd be 89 years old now.
Yeah.
Is she still living?
No,
she
she
died.
passed away, but she did get married.
Did she win?
Late in life, in the 60s or something.
Oh my heavens! And she was a beautiful woman.
Oh yeah.
What was she like? I mean, she was so almost as if she were ethereal. She was very warm, pleasant, and, and genuine. But you know, she carried herself with somewhat of an etherealness. Did she not?
Yes. Yeah. She was a very. We were best of friends, and exchanged gifts and birthdays and Christmas and all, and. Then we'd eat lunch together. We'd go up and have lunch uptown.
Uptown.
We had an hour lunch.
That's right.
And then we'd come back at Central School, to Central School.
Where would you eat uptown, just out of curiosity?
Oh, you know where, let's see. Do you know, where John Gross had a butcher shop? Well, there was a little restaurant in there. We would eat there sometimes.
What was the name of it?
I can't remember that.
It'll come to us. But it was a very, very small restaurant. It was a little hole in the wall.
Yeah, it was just like they had benches up like this.
Yes, little hole in the wall, but it was good food.
Yes, and then
cheap.
Then we would go down to, across from Mike's now. There was a restaurant across the street, and I can't recall that. Was that Kleckner's?
Kleckner's at one time, but it would not have been Kleckner's at that time.
No.
Yeah, there was a restaurant across the street there. Do you remember when you first came to Wadsworth what your salary was the first year?
$900.
$900 a year. And did you get paid all $900 in 9 months, or did they just?
9 months.
In 9 months. So you got $100 a month. And you probably thought that you were doing very well.
I thought I was lucky that I had a job.
Very fortunate to do that. The principal was Belle Lytle, and you said something about O.J. work. Tell us then about the arrangement of the school as it pertains to grades kindergarten all the way through senior high school, and how that worked.
Let me see. Kindergarten was not there. First grade was right across from the office.
And who taught that?
Jenny Harpster.
Jenny Harpster.
Wolf.
And Jenny Wolf.
And then right next door was third grade.
And that was?
Velma Birkbeck.
Velma Birkbeck.
Then we'd go down here and go up the stairs. And right over here was the fourth grade. Fifth grade would be Miss Lytle. And then sixth grade would be over on the side there.
And that was Mrs. Rohr?
Not at that time. I think Elsie Ringer.
Elsie Ringer at that time.
And Mary Sample was there, and then Mrs. Rohr. I can't exactly know when I can't remember all these dates exactly when Mrs. Rohr did come. But we were very close, all of us. We had a great relationship.
There was one grade for each of the grades, and they were in the high school.
Yes.
And the kids would actually intermingle, not necessarily socially, but they would intermingle. They would go out to recess while the high school students were going to their lockers and all of that thing. Did it ever cause a problem as far as you were concerned?
No.
Never a problem?
No. And of course, Donna Lind was there, and she handled everything.
Donna Bergner. Donna Bergner Lind. We had her on the program here. She started working 70 years ago, 1927.
Did she?
71 years ago. And she still is in very good shape, and she remembers so many things. And the one thing that I remember specifically was the fact that she said that for the entire school system, or for the entire school, they had one telephone that was on her desk.
That's right, I remember. That's right.
And I said, well, didn't that cause a problem? She said, no. If the phone rang, I would answer it. And for Mr. Close, he would come out to my office and he would talk on the telephone. I said, well, he's always in your office. Oh, no, well, people didn't have telephones and they didn't call very often. Now they call. I mean, the telephone rings 1,000 times a day in every elementary school, but at that time they didn't. Tell us a little bit about how the music program was going when you first started, for instance, from kindergarten or from first grade all the way through the high school. In 1939, E.K. Bennett was still there, was he not?
Yes, he was.
And he had a very good orchestra, a very good band. And did you accompany it, or did you participate in any way?
No, but I did. I tell you, before I was even hired as a teacher, my father was playing in the orchestra, and E.K. had an orchestra that, community orchestra, I guess, I don't know, but anyway, my father was there. Maybe it was my first year teaching, and they asked me to play the piano as a guest. And my father said at that time, he said, I was so nervous when they wheeled that piano out, and you were to play, but I played, I don't know, I played something, I don't know.
You played all by yourself? You played solo?
Well, yeah, played solo. I played
you didn't
solo.
play for the entire...
No, no.
You studied music at Ball & Wallace.
Yes, I did.
Do you remember who your piano teacher was there, organ?
Mrs. Schuler.
Mrs. Schuler. And her husband was there as well.
Yes, but I had Mrs. And Mr. Riemenschneider, of course.
And Dr. Riemenschneider, right.
Yes, I had some organ.
Albert Riemenschneider.
Right.
And very powerful man, big man.
Yes.
Played organ. Did you take organ from him too?
Yes, yes. Well, a year or something like that.
Mrs. Schuler didn't teach after a while then, that Dr. Schuler taught.
I think he continued, but she didn't.
She didn't continue, right. But you taught, in other words,
I liked her though.
These were the people who were training concert pianists. So that means, the reason I brought this up is that actually you're a concert pianist, is that right?
I play the piano.
You play the piano?
I don't know.
Well,
I play a little bit of everything.
But you could not have got through Ball & Wallace with those people.
Well, I guess
with Schuler's, and not Riemenschneider's, because they were the old German school.
I know.
And very, very demanding people, as you well remember. Then you came to Wadsworth and you became involved with so many things in music. And I think we need to hear about that because we'll run out of time if we don't. How about telling us about some of the operettas that you put on?
Well, my first operetta was Honey Pirates. And, that was a big deal.
Do you remember what year that would have been and who some of the...
1940.
1940. And who were some of the people in
Roger Dutt was...
Roger Dutt, who is now 68 years old.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Colleen Seiberling, I believe.
Colleen Seiberling, who's now 70 years old.
I think she was in it.
And they'll kill me for telling their ages, but we have to do this historically.
Marita Sickles.
Marita Sickles, who is now 73 or 2 years old.
Yeah, I have a picture here someplace.
Yes.
I don't know. And I can't... Was it Aileen and Eileen Freed? One of those...
Freed, they're up in their 70s as well.
They'd have to be, wouldn't they?
Oh, yes, absolutely. These little kids are now 70 years old.
I was very young, though.
You were very young, that's right, that's right. Who were some of the other people, do you remember, that were in that?
Well, later on, we had Clara Jo Griesmer.
Clara Jo is a little younger. She's
yeah, she'd be the younger one.
Clara Jo would be somewhere close to 60, 61, 62 years of age.
All right, I have some names of operas.
Well, let's hear those names.
We had Honey Pirates. Now, this is not in order, and that's from my head, which sometimes doesn't work quite right. Honey Pirates, Johnny Appleseed, and Tim Miley was...
Tim? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that was Miley. And Goldilocks, I think Clara Jo was Goldilocks.
Clara Jo Griesmer.
Sonny of Sunnybrook
Who's now Clara Jo
Crumley.
Crumley.
Cowboy on the Moon, Peep Show Park, Laughing Star of Zuni, Rip Van Winkle, HMS Pinafore, Jack and the Beanstalk, Daniel Boone, Early Bird Catches the Worm, Lazy Town, Scarecrow Dick, Sorcerer's Apprentice. I taught you Janet Fulton, and Chris, her daughter, was the queen. And Easter Time is a happy time, and Cinderella. Maybe I've forgotten some of them.
But those were all the operas that you produced.
Yeah, and it was a big deal too.
And you brought a lot of joy to the Wadsworth area through that music. Tell us a little bit about some of the problems that you had to encounter as a teacher during a period of time that was wrought with the end of the Depression, and two, where the war broke out.
I can remember exactly when it came over with the war on a Monday that President Roosevelt came and declared war.
And in the afternoon?
Yes, about 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Because I was going into my 4th grade room there, and the stairs, you remember the stairs going?
Oh, surely.
And I stood right there, and it was over the loudspeaker. And I can still hear that voice that President
Declared war. This day shall live in infamy.
Oh, boy.
It was hard, very difficult.
Yes, it was.
What problems did that bring to the schools?
Oh, I can't say really a lot of problems. A lot of fathers, I suppose, and all were in the...
Fathers and teachers as well.
And teachers, that's right.
And the teachers were... now, in the elementary school, where almost all of the teachers were women, that was not a problem particularly, but in the high school, they start taking them left and right.
I know they did.
And then they had difficulty getting teachers. And a lot of the teachers who came in were substandard in terms of their training, and that's when we began the cadet program, or we didn't begin the cadet, we really dipped into the cadet program, and then about in the mid-50s or so, they were forced then to go, 40s I guess, late 40s, 50s, they were forced then to go into, to complete their degrees. Tell us a little bit about well, for instance, was there a piano in every room?
No.
No. Tell us about that.
We had to. John Hanna, you know.
Mayor of Wadsworth right now.
He was a wonderful piano pusher.
He was a piano pusher, right.
And who did he say? He told me that not too long ago, who the other boy I would have do that.
Wouldn't be Jerry Pate, would it?
No, well, I had Jerry Pate.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you would.
Oh, yeah, I had a lot of them.
He also was a councilman at one time.
Yeah. Well, you know, but we from one room to the next.
You pushed the piano in.
Oh, sure. And
was it a big piano or a spinet piano?
Not a spinet, but a
studio grand.
Studio grand. There you go. And you know, I have people come up to me, especially. Well, Mrs. Harpster always calls me Jenny. She always calls me and said, now someone died and we want to go pay our respects. So we go there, the parents of some of these people. And we'll walk in and they'll say, there's my first grade teacher and my music teacher. And I've even had children, or I call them children, or they'd come up and sing one of their songs that they might remembered. But it's a great reward, I think, for all the effort that people, you know, that I enjoyed it, you know, but it was a lot of work for a lot for me, and I had always had the cooperation of all the teachers, and parents were wonderful.
Well, actually, you became a legacy. You started in 1939 as a little farm girl from Poe,
Right.
which doesn't exist anymore almost. And you came to Wadsworth, and you immediately became a legacy because of your personality, your vitality, your vivaciousness, and your ability, and your gift of music, and all of those other kinds of things. What did you do then after you left Central School? You went to Franklin School. You went to Lincoln School.
And I went to Valley View.
Valley View School. And you did this, and who then came in to help you with these other buildings? Or did you have all the buildings?
No, let me see. There was, well, the music teachers were, Lois Durr,
Lois
Durr and Martha Wyrick.
Martha Wyrick.
And
Martha Wyrick, incidentally, was the first girl ever to play in the Wadsworth High School band.
Yeah, that's right. And Ellen Kreider later,
Ellen Kreider.
and, you know, she married and came to this, and we had a great.
Ellen Kreider married Dana Kreider.
That's right. That's right. I see
Yes.
them quite often at the funeral home. I'm sorry to say, but that's where a lot of us meet.
That's where, at our age, we all meet at the funeral home.
And there was a Geraldine Tobias too that was.
She's from Akron.
And of course King Sears.
King Sears was the music director in the in 307 in the high school, and he died.
Yeah.
Ruby also was a musician, and both of those two went to Baldwin Wallace
I know
College.
they did.
And they probably would be close to you, or they'd be older than you, wouldn't they?
Be older than I would. But is she still living?
I don't think that she is, but I'm not positive.
I think she went to Lakeside, didn't she?
Well, they went to Michigan for a while, but I think that she's gone. But we'll certainly find out, because people will call tonight and say Ruby is or is not living. But,
and of course Gene Lawrence.
Gene Lawrence came there,
later.
and he came as a young, skinny young fellow, and now he's retired. And
Oh, I'm still playing that piano though.
and he plays just very beautifully.
Yeah.
Now, something happened in your career in the mid-'50s that brought a particular joy to your life. Tell us about that.
Now what is that?
Well, what brought you the greatest joy in the mid-'50s?
Oh, you mean when I was married?
When you were married.
Oh, I was late. I was a late bloomer. Well,
How old were you when you were married?
34.
34. Well, I was 32, so
Oh,
that's not too
wow.
bad. No, I got married with my first Medicare check.
Well, I didn't have a chance to go to dancing a lot, and I love to dance because we're a family orchestra, I didn't tell you about that. My father played trumpet, and my brother, Bill Hartman, he lived in Wadsworth, married Marjorie Gross, Hartman, and then we had Horace Williams, and he was worked in the grocery store. And
Now, Horace Williams is from on Route 57 in Medina.
yeah, and then
Close to where you lived, isn't he?
yeah, well, he's since moved to Texas.
But didn't
he's
he used to live there?
That's another Williams.
Another
It's
Williams?
a brother.
A brother? Okay. Got the
And-
wrong Williams.
Yeah, but you're in the right family.
Right.
But anyway, we played all over for Grange dances, Masonic dances, school dances, and I even have people come up. Do you remember me how we used to dance? Well, anyway, we did get to go to a dance. I would go with a bunch of courthouse girls. I had a lot of friends in the worked the courthouse. Well, about 6 of us would go over to a recreation ballroom. It was up on
42?
Market Street.
Oh, I mean in Akron.
In
Yes.
Akron.
Recreation, or was it the
It was
East Market Gardens?
No, that East Market was down. This was down, and this was upstairs.
Okay.
And it was
Okay, I know where
just
that is.
Yeah, and it was just and then people who, guys who worked at the Firestone and Goodyear and all, they were there. So then that's where I met my husband with dancing. And I never did get a chance to dance too much because I was always playing. But I liked to dance.
That pretty well disturbed your the normal course of events until you were 34 years old. Now, how did you meet your husband? I mean, you were dancing, but I mean, was one of these things where someone fixed you up, or what was that?
No, he just asked me to dance.
He asked you to dance. And what was he doing at the time?
He's working at Firestone.
Doing what?
Oh gosh, you asked me that, and steel products.
Steel products in Firestone.
Yeah,
And then you danced for a little while, then you start going together and so forth, and then you were married.
Yeah.
And tell us about that. I understand that that was quite a wedding.
Well, not really. It was just a small one, but we were married for 25 years, and then he passed away in
25 years.
76.
76. Mm-hmm.
I retired in 74, and he wasn't well. He had emphysema, and I was so glad that I could be with him for 2 years before he passed away.
Right.
And then I've been alone ever since.
And you still are alone. Right? Mm-hmm. But you live
In the same place.
Same place.
Still mow my lawn.
Which is what?
I still mow my lawn.
And you still mow your lawn. And tell us where you do live right now.
I live up the blinker light on 162 on
Right.
Wadsworth Road. I'm the second house if you're going to Medina.
On the right.
On the left-hand side.
On the left-hand side. Okay.
Going
I'm
up.
sorry. Yes, if you're going to Medina, on the left-hand
And
side.
I'm almost in the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
As I came out, I had to ask someone to move their truck because they're putting up a blinker light at that bad corner down on 162 on Wadsworth Road. And they're putting a great big light up there.
Big light, because it is a very dangerous spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Close. We talked about Frank Close, and Frank Close was also a farmer from Millersburg.
I know.
Tell us a little bit about some of the personal things that you enjoyed about Frank Close, and the fact that Frank Close's wife was an extraordinarily good organist and pianist. Tell us about that.
I did get along very well with him, and he brought, I believe, Miss Martin, Jean Martin,
Yes.
and Miss Lytle. They were both from down there.
They were all from the same spot, around the same...
Fredericksburg.
right down there. Frank Close tells the story of the way that they would choose Amish bishops. And I think that it was not accurate, but he told this story over and over and over again to various classes where the men would sit around a table and they put a spider in the middle of the table, and wherever the spider went, that person became the bishop. Now, I can remember that story. I heard it 60 years ago, and I can still remember it as if it were yesterday, or 50 years ago, and I can still remember it 55, and I can still remember it as if it were yesterday. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes a wonderful story.
That's a nice story.
Now, the reason I brought that up is that what about the stories he would tell? He had a real penchant for telling stories.
Yeah, well, I can't remember like that, but he wanted promptness. I know sometimes they said that if a teacher would come in a little late, he'd have his watch out standing in the hallway.
Checking it out.
And then I remember being down in Franklin, and someone would look out the window and see him walking down the hill and alert everyone.
And why would he walk? I think that's so symbolic of his personality. Why did he walk?
Exercise, I don't know.
Pardon me?
Maybe he didn't have his car, I don't know.
I think it was to save gasoline.
Probably. The gasoline rationing or something.
Well, plus the fact that he was a little bit on the tight side. Ralph Rohr was here. Ralph was 70 years graduated, and he came in. We interviewed him.
No kidding.
Yes, and he remembers when Ralph Rohr, came in one morning, and this person came out of that big trap door that went up on top of the high school, and he was all black with tar and dirt and so forth, and he had been up there repairing a roof with tar and burlap sacks, and so that's much better than anything else. And the reason he was doing that is to save money. You know, all of our administrators in Wadsworth have been extremely careful about saving money.
Oh, yes.
And he surely did lead the pack on that. Tell us a little bit more about his personality. He was very strict, he was very prompt,
yes,
and he was eloquent in so many ways. Had a nice delivery of his speech and so forth. But tell us a little bit about his personality. Did he ever get angry?
Well, I didn't ever see that too much.
We never saw it either as students, but I understand that he was
I imagine he could be.
He what?
I imagine that he could be.
Right. What about Matilda, his wife? As a pianist, did you ever play?
No, not too much, because I lived in Medina, and I'd go to, I suppose if I would have been living in Wadsworth, I would have been around her more, and with the piano.
She taught a lot of piano students. And
I remember that.
And brings us to another.
Very nice lady, though.
Now, did you teach piano?
I did it when I first started.
And whom did you teach who might be now very powerful?
Oh boy, I didn't care for it too much. To tell you
You didn't care for that. You liked the other part of it.
Teaching like that, but I can't at the moment think right. Oh, Norma Steyer, Norma.
Yes, and she played beautifully too.
Well, but she said I was her only music teacher through the grades, and then she ended up teaching down in
Yes.
music.
Mm-hmm. Norma's a very, very fine pianist. As a matter of fact, she played for high school graduations, I remember. I think that's correct. We had another one, Jack Mueller, who was a student of Mrs. Close's, and Jack Mueller became an organist and a professor somewhere. I forgot exactly where, and I'm sure that someone's going to call us tonight, and that's fine, to tell us where he's a professor. As you know, the reason that we have this is we're trying to bring out all of the history of Wadsworth and put it on film before we all pass away and no one remembers anything but we're going to be doing. And there are people who remember some things better than we remember about ourselves.
I know, I know. You're bringing up a lot of things.
You just said something here that one of your colleagues called you Ginny. And there's a story behind that, isn't there?
Sadie.
Sadie. I'm sorry, Sadie.
Now, where did you hear that?
There's a story behind that, isn't there?
Something about I had a dog named Sadie, little dog named Sadie. And yeah, that's right. I don't know where that came from.
Well, it's out there.
Of course, I see Ray Holcomb and Chuck Chapman all the time.
Yes, and we had both those people on this program because they had so many good things to say. Going back then to Belle Lytle. Belle Lytle then became the first principal of Overlook School.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's a story that's been told about Belle Lytle, and you tell me if it's true or not. And we dearly loved her. As a matter of fact, I think that there's anybody in Wadsworth whom everyone really respected and loved and never would say a bad thing about her because there was nothing bad to say about her, was Belle Lytle. But she would walk to Overlook every single morning.
Oh, yes.
She would walk up that hill. And she was a good, strong woman, but
Yes,
she was
she
up in years. I'm positive she was.
Oh, yes. They lived on Highland with Miss Martin.
Yes, with
Jean Martin.
Yes, with Jean Martin. So she would walk up that hill. Now, it's a pretty steep hill, as you know, going up to Overlook. The story is that Belle Lytle went into the library and she said, oh, this beautiful library that we have here, and we have all of these books and they're new. So she locked the door so that they would not get dirty. Is that accurate or not?
I don't know.
That came from some of her teachers.
Well, that could be.
Could well be. Now, did you teach at Overlook with her?
Oh yes. I was at all the
Do you remember some of the students at Overlook who are now probably in their 40s, 50s, or 60s?
Oh, my. Yes. Remember the secretaries, too.
And who were they?
Well, Gertrude Trossel was one.
Who?
Gertrude Trossel.
Oh, yes, Gertrude Trossel.
And then Anka Lubinkovich.
Anka Lubinkovich, right?
She's in Sweden now.
Yes.
I had a Christmas card from her. And then Mr. Trossel was the janitor,
Yes.
maintenance man, janitor, I don't know.
The custodian.
Custodian, right. I'll tell you a little story about Lincoln School, too. Every August, we five of us get together. And we started when we, let's see, when I retired, Joanne Fixler Heichel
Yes.
invited us, Martha Knight, Mitzi Paymer Goss, Wanda Kuhn, and Blackwood, and myself.
Blackwood was the same thing as Wanda Kuhn, though.
Wanda Kuhn. Kuhns.
Oh, Kuhn's, but not
Wanda.
Wanda. But you're not talking about Wanda Blackwood, are you?
Yeah, she was a secretary. Or
Yes,
she was
right. She was a secretary.
Yeah. She was not a teacher, but she was
Right.
a secretary, yeah. But she would, anyway, she invited us for a chicken salad to get together, and that was in about 75 or 76, and we've been going there every August to have our luncheon and to get together. So that's a lot of fun.
We have here a booklet from Lincoln School. On the anniversary of 1990, Lincoln School was established in 1915. Now, believe it or not, you started at Lincoln School when it was only about 15 years old.
Oh, I did?
Mm-hmm.
Well.
1940 or so.
Or so in the 40s, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
in the
right.
40s, so 15 to 20 years old was a fairly new school.
That's right.
Now we're going to have to raise it.
I know it.
And the reason for that is that it is degenerating somewhat. Now, when you first went there, what was Lincoln like? And I realized fully well that it looked like every other Georgian-style school, but what was it like? I mean, what was significant about Lincoln School that made everyone like to go to Lincoln School?
Well, friendly, the kids, they were really nice, and I can say that about Franklin
as
School.
well. And who was the principal at Lincoln when you went there? Was it Star Joachim? I mean,
Ray Holcomb.
Ray Holcomb.
Chuck Chapman later.
Ray Holcomb was there then. See, they traded around, the principals
I know
traded
they
around.
did. They would trade them off, or trade them around, you know.
Every 3 or 4 years, something
Yeah,
like that.
I know.
Yeah.
And I was at Valley View when it opened too.
And who was there at that time?
Ray Holcomb.
Ray Holcomb.
And Harold Fix.
And Harold Fix.
As a
Harold
teacher.
Fix was a teacher at that time.
That's right.
Harold Fix was a farmer. He came up here to farm. Had a
From
300-acre
Pennsylvania,
farm, I believe, and then he became the superintendent later on. which
I
you all
know, I know.
Extremely unusual for an elementary person to become the superintendent, but Harold proved them all wrong. He was not only a good teacher, an elementary teacher, but he's also a very, very fine superintendent, and he brought Wadsworth a long way. And that gave a lot of impetus for Wadsworth being where it is today. When you were at Lincoln School, do you remember some of the students who were there who are now, well, you remember John Hanna, who was the mayor, and he pushed piano for you.
Yeah, no, he was at Franklin.
He was at Franklin, I realized that, but I mean, do you remember anyone like a John Hanna who pushed the piano for you and now is the mayor?
Well, let's see.
I mean,
Wow.
You didn't put a little Johnny in the corner and now he's your physician, did you?
Oh, no. But I tell you, I did have a, this is something. My birthday's coming up March 13th. And I had Mark Smith now had a birthday March 13th. And he remembers me every time, every day. And
Mark Smith.
Mark Smith. And he.
Tell us who Mark Smith is for the record.
Well, he married Jack, oh boy, can't think of it right now. But anyway, he used to come up and sit on a piano stool with me and watch me play. And he always liked me a lot, and I made a little fuss over him, and he had a little. And he either calls me or sends me a card. So I think that's great. And I see people, Jenny Harpster, well, I get together with her every Friday.
Jenny Harpster was a first grade teacher, very, very popular, and many people in Wadsworth had her. We have not had anyone to be able to tell us the personal Jenny Harpster. Tell us about the personal Jenny Harpster, and then tell us about the personal Dorothy Huff.
Yes, Dorothy Huff was from Medina.
Yes, and that's why I wanted you to talk about her as well.
Yes, she was a fine teacher, but she had an eye problem.
She had very, very, very thick glasses, about, maybe without exaggeration, 1/4 of an inch thick. And they were very small, and she barely could see.
I know, and she drive every day, you know, down 57.
Yes,
And then Jenny Harpster, though, she's one of my best friends, and we share everything. And
how old is Jenny now, approximately?
83.
83 years old, and she's in good health. And tell us when you first met her, what she was doing and how she was doing it.
She was in first grade.
First grade.
And she wasn't married. She was married later in life, too.
And what is her maiden name now? What is her name now?
Harpster.
What was her maiden? I'm sorry. What was her maiden name then? I'm sorry.
Wolf.
Wolf. Jenny Wolf.
Jenny Wolf, and her brother's name was Forrest.
Forrest Wolf, who was a jeweler.
That's right.
Right.
It worked at Stonier's.
That's right. He was a jeweler, and she. I think he's gone now, isn't he, Forrest?
No, he lives in Florida.
Oh, he lives in Florida. But Forrest Wolf is a jeweler, and Jenny was a sister. She got married then.
Just a year before I did.
Right. To whom? Let's see.
Woodrow Harpster.
And what relationship is Woodrow Harpster to Wadsworth?
Well, he was from Rittman. And he's a musician. He loved to play.
That's right.
And he loved to play, and he played with the Pico.
Pico Sechrist.
That's right.
And What did Harpster play, Mr. Harpster? What did he play?
He has keyboards.
Keyboards.
Right today he has, I don't know how many keyboards in his living room, and he's a computer. In computers.
In computers, right. And what did he play when he was playing with Sterling Seacrest?
I don't know, maybe piano, he played violin too.
It's tremendous virtuosity and just about anything.
He would love to have gone to school, but at that time he was couldn't because
Things were tough.
I often think about my parents, how they would, they put me through college. And then my brother was in Ohio State for 1 year at the same time, and I don't know how they did. My father was a farmer, and my mother was a school teacher, not making much. I had a grandmother that we lived with, but it must have been really tough.
Oh, it's very difficult. I remember going to college, and my entire year, that's for books, tuition, meals, and room, and the whole thing, $840.
Oh.
But you didn't have $840.
That's
you were lucky to have a couple bucks,
Often people have said to me, well, how'd you live through the Depression? What do you remember about it? I said, well, I lived on a farm, and I really don't remember much about it. We always had chickens. We had chicken a lot.
A lot of chicken.
A lot of chicken.
We had eggs and potatoes.
And eggs and beef, And I can't really remember. And I had it was an older cousin of my father's. She was giving me clothes, and my mother would fix them up, And my mother would sew my clothes. And I don't remember much about the
Just out of curiosity, Mother worked at Poe as a teacher. You started in 1939, and you made that $900 a year. What did your mother make?
Oh boy, she probably didn't make that. I don't know.
I doubt if she would have.
No, it was a 3-room schoolhouse.
And she probably made maybe $400 or $500 a year, if that.
Probably.
Because they didn't pay at all. That was a county school. When you were going to Medina High School, or I'm sorry, to Poe School, do you remember the county superintendent's name? See, there were about 15 or 20 of these schools, very, very small. S.H. Babcock's, yeah. And do you remember anything at all about him?
Oh, he was kind of very precise and walked in and all. I remember that. But I remember my music teachers. I couldn't wait to have them.
What was her?
Miss Hill. There was a Miss Hill and.
Miss Harmony, wasn't there a Miss Harmony too?
Yeah.
I remember her.
And then, of course, Delmer Graff was later on.
Right, but he was instrumental.
Yes, he was.
Miss Harmony was a music teacher at all of the county schools.
That's
she
right.
was a circuit teacher.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, in the early 30s, yes, I remember her. And we had a Miss Grabenstetter who was an art teacher.
Yeah, I remember her. I remember her. And then Henry Zengler, do you remember him?
Yes, Henry.
He was from Brunswick.
Brunswick. And then we had F.H.W. Behrens.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about him, music teacher.
Oh, he was a good friend of mine. And I believe that Mrs. Behrens is still living.
Mr. Behrens would be close to 100 years old now, would he not?
Oh, yes, but he's not living anymore.
No, he's not living, no. There's a scholarship in his honor in music, is that right? Did you have anything to do with that scholarship?
No, I didn't.
Do you have any of your students who might have applied for that scholarship?
I don't know. I can't think right offhand.
Tell us a little bit about Mr. Behrens and his appearance and his demeanor and so forth as a music teacher. He wandered around to all of the schools in Wadsworth.
I know. Well, his hair was always kind of hanging down.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Looked like he played violin.
Yes, and she played the violin.
She played the violin as well.
String instruments. Her name was
Had kind of a nasal tone to his voice, as I remember.
And then he tuned my piano, and I had him. He tells a story about tuning the piano, and I said, well, I'll be home, and someone came to the door and he says, no one's home.
No one's home.
And here he was.
There he was. We're going to run out of time unless we get some of these other things. The beloved memory of your husband. Tell us about who he was and what he was like.
Well, he was a very kind man, and we got along just beautifully, I thought. And he was older than I was, but he said I was the best thing that ever happened to him. So, I was real proud of that. And he was much about telling people, but I know he appreciated it, and we had a great life together.
And you did not have children?
No, we did not. But I had 3 nieces.
3 nieces.
They live in Bonnie Barker lives in Wadsworth, and Pat Hartman lives in Wadsworth, and Judy Roach lives in Norton.
Right, and tell us who they were before they were married.
They were Hartman. My brother was Bill Hartman.
And those
He
were the
was in
3
Florida.
nieces, and you, if we remember correctly, you were kind of like a second mother to them, is that right?
That's right.
And they listened to you as well as they would listen to their own mother and father. As a matter of fact, probably more so, because you were tougher.
Well, they'd come up and play on the farm,
And
and they still come.
the ones who live in Wadsworth, where are they and who are they?
Well, Bonnie Barker is Bob Barker's wife, and she lives down on next to the cemetery and on Beck Street. And Pat Hartman lives on Broad Street, and she works at B&W. And Judy's home, Judy Roach, and her husband is
They live in Norton.
in Norton, and her husband is Richard Roach, and he is a works for the county, the sheriff's department in Akron.
I'm going to call upon your good memory now. When I first started teaching, this is some 44 years ago, first started teaching in this area. I taught 2 years in the Army before that, but when I started teaching here, I was teaching with a person who retired the next year. She's now dead. She'd be over 100 years old. As a matter of fact, she'd be 102 years old if she were living. Do you remember any old teachers that you came in contact with the first year that you taught, who then quickly retired maybe a year or so later? And who were they? And tell us a little bit about them. That will give us some history of way back when.
Well, I don't know how long Lulu Knopf taught. I mean, and how much longer after I retired. Marjorie Lasko came in 2nd grade there. She was from Cambridge. And I really can't say, and I really can't say too much about Miss Lila. Miss Lila was always the same.
She never aged. No, she didn't have gray hair. I mean, it was always kind of a pepperish.
Yeah, it was kind of around, you know.
She had a little,
Yeah.
whatever they did, the older ladies did with their hair, put it in the
And she was a very fine woman, person.
Oh yeah, no question. She never married.
No.
And she was not from Wadsworth originally. She was from Fredericksburg. But she had no relatives here, and as I remember, there are very few relatives that she had anywhere. Is that accurate?
She lived with a brother.
But here in Wadsworth?
Oh, no.
Yes, right.
I think Mr. Close brought them up.
Right. But I mean, she had no relatives here in Wadsworth.
Not that I know.
What we're trying to establish here is any relationships between the people who were then, about whom we're talking, and if there's anybody left today. I don't think there is anyone there.
No.
In terms of Lulu Knopf, there are some relatives. Now, who would those relatives be at the present time? Do you remember who those would be?
Dr. Klotz married,
Peg Heller.
yeah,
And that was a
niece.
That was a niece, right. Peg Heller. Peg
That's
Heller
right.
Klotz.
See, yeah.
Right.
Good. I'm glad you remember that.
Well, some things I remember. But
No, I knew, but I couldn't recall the name right there.
and then there's another group of Hellers also, who are nieces and are nephews, I guess. I'm going to have a rough time coming up with those names, but the Hellers are related. Now, the Closes. Do you remember the Close children, the 2 boys?
Not too well, really.
Okay.
Because I had grade school, and they were probably in high school.
Yeah, well, they would have been, yes. They would have been in high school. Now, those two boys married. One still lives in Wadsworth, or would have lived in Wadsworth. I think they're gone. And the other one married Marjorie Young. And I think that they're all deceased. But I'm sure that we'll hear about that if we're not. What about the Work family? I mean, you mentioned O.J. Work. Do we have any of his progeny here? He had a daughter, Joanne. But I don't think she's around here. Therefore, there's no one here from the Work family. Just want to establish the fact that we have no one here.
No, I didn't have her in school either.
Didn't have Joanne. She would have been ahead of that. Joanne would be 71 years old now if she were living. Now, you worked for 3 different superintendents, if my calculations are correct here. Could you tell us who they were? Following Frank Close, you had Maurice Burkholder.
Okay. Remember him coming in the first day and giving orders. I mean, just like he right out of the Navy.
Well, he was right out of the Navy. He was a lieutenant commander.
Something like that.
Of the Navy. Mm-hmm.
But we got along fine. And she was a lovely person too, Mrs.
Yes, Ruth Burkholder.
But
she was a teacher, was
passed,
she?
yes, but she passed away.
Passed away. And
But
then
he's still living.
Yes, but he had a son who passed away too.
Mark.
Mark, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Just tragic. Tell us about how the teachers reacted to this man who came in and gave orders. And I'll tell you how the students reacted to this man who came in and gave orders.
Well, I think we were a little, frightened. I don't know. I was a younger teacher. I don't know. Not frightened, but I thought, uh-oh, better straighten up, you know.
He was very, very severe in those ways.
But then he mellowed.
We had then, yes, he did mellow a little bit there. Get into a school system like that, you'll mellow fast. The first thing that he did for the students was to call an assembly on the second day that he was there. And the person who at that time was the principal, who was O.J. Work, got in front of this assembly of 1,000 students and said, I want to introduce to you your new superintendent, Mr. Burkholder, who has just been retired from the Navy as a naval officer. He will bring us a great deal of discipline, I think that was the word to use, in the Navy. And then there was dead silence and not another word, and everyone was just perfectly still. And from the hallway outside O.J. Work Auditorium, in came this man running and jumped up the 3 steps onto the stage, and everyone just gasped. And then he looked into a paper bag and said something like, the cat's now out of the bag, or something like that. Well, it brought the house down, and we immediately fell in love with him. Well, then after this little bit of a charade, he became, as you say, very demanding, very orderly. We would be walking down the hallway, and this would have been in the early 40s or mid 40s, I guess would have been. Probably 46, wasn't it? 47?
I just can't remember.
Somewhere in that area, about 50 years ago, 52, 3 years ago, something like that. I've forgotten exactly when. And he would call you by name. And if your name were Jack, he would say, Jack, and you'd have to stop. And then he would address you. He would never continue a conversation without calling you by name.
I know.
But, and we enjoy that. Now, you work for somebody else beyond Maurice Burkholder. Morris Burkholder.
Harold Fix, but
before
Dick Rich, didn't see much of him.
Dr. Dick Rich, Richard Dick Rich.
He didn't come around the schools a lot.
He didn't come around very much.
He did not. No. No. And I can't say that I knew him. He wasn't here very long, was he?
Well, he was here a few years.
A few
years. He was here when
years.
they built the new high school.
That's right.
And then following that, you had Harold Fix.
Harold Fix.
Or was it, would it have been Dick Holmes?
Oh, it was Harold Fix.
Harold Fix? Mm-hmm. Did you ever work for Dick Holmes then?
No.
Okay, then Harold.
I see. I was in '74. I think Dick Holmes was.
Oh, he was the principal, I'm sorry. He was the principal of the high school. Okay,
That's right,
Fix.
that's right.
And then you retired under Harold Fix. Is that correct?
Had a lot of fun with him.
Well, tell us about him a little bit. He had a sense of humor that wouldn't quit. We all enjoyed it.
Well, I talked with him up at Valley View, and always a lot of fun, you know. Talk about how he was in Pennsylvania. His dad had his snowplow, and he would come down and he'd take down someone's. He helped his dad with a snowplow out in the road, and he'd knock down a mailbox or something like that. I don't know why, but it was fun. He was great to work with.
He's a wonderful person.
Yes.
And we teased him a great deal about the fact that he was so bald-headed, you know.
Yeah.
He looks so much older, but he's not very old at all.
No.
He's considerably younger than he looks. Alice Hartman Chester, forever to be known as Miss Hartman.
Okay.
Despite the fact that you are Alice Hartman Chester, Miss Hartman.
All right.
We want to thank you for 2 things today. One is for bringing to us a dimension of the school that we would have never known because you were right there with it. And also to let you know how the city of Wadsworth and the many, many students, hundreds of students from 1939 until 74, So that's a period of 35 years. And in that 35-year period, you probably touched thousands and thousands of kids. And they still remember you with the love and the respect and the admiration that you so well deserve. And that legacy is going to live on forever in our memories. And now that it's on tape, it will live on in the memories of our progeny as well. Thank you very much for coming with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.